In a dimly lit Italian restaurant, the air was thick with tension and the aroma of rich sauces and fresh bread. The soft glow of candlelight flickered against the walls, illuminating the faces of the patrons who were lost in their own worlds, unaware of the storm brewing in the far corner table. Isabella sat, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her wine glass, as she waited for Marco, the infamous mafia boss, to arrive. She had heard the whispers of his power, the aura of danger that surrounded him, and the stories of those who had crossed him. Yet, here she was, entangled in an uncontrollable circumstance that had drawn her into his orbit. As she waited, Isabella's mind raced with thoughts of her own life, the choices that had led her to this moment. She was strong-willed, fiercely independent, yet the weight of her current situation felt suffocating. She had never imagined meeting a man like Marco, someone who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mixture of anticipation and dread. Just then, the door swung open, and a chill swept through the restaurant as Marco entered. Dressed impeccably in a tailored suit, Marco's presence was magnetic. He scanned the room with sharp, assessing eyes before his gaze landed on Isabella. Their eyes locked, and in that fleeting moment, the world around them faded. She could feel the intensity of his stare crawling beneath her skin. Marco approached with a measured stride, each step resonating with authority. As he slid into the seat across from her, the air crackled with unspoken words. "Isabella," he said, his voice smooth as silk, yet laced with a hint of danger. The way he pronounced her name sent shivers down her spine. He leaned forward, his piercing gaze unwavering. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," she replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Their eyes held each other in a fierce battle of wills, neither willing to back down. In that moment, Isabella felt a flicker of something, curiosity, perhaps, mixed with the instinct to flee. The moment stretched, filled with tension that felt almost suffocating. Isabella sensed the weight of her choices bearing down on her, the decision to be here with Marco, but she was also aware of her instincts urging her to leave. She looked around the restaurant, at the couples sharing intimate conversations, oblivious to the peril just a few feet away. Her heart raced with the internal conflict of wanting to escape the danger he represented and yet feeling inexplicably drawn to him. "Why did you ask me to meet you?" she inquired, trying to steady her breath as she sought answers. Marco's lips curled into a slight smile. There was something disarming about it, yet it sent alarm bells ringing in her mind. "You're a woman of principle," he replied, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I need someone like you in my life. Someone who understands the cost of loyalty." His words hung in the air, rich with implications. Isabella couldn't help but feel her defenses crumbling under the weight of his gaze. As their conversation unfolded, Marco shared fragments of his life, his rise to power, and the sacrifices he had made along the way. Each word painted a picture of a man shaped by harsh choices and the isolating burden of leadership. Isabella listened intently, her heart torn between fear and empathy. She began to see glimpses of the man behind the title, a man who was as much a prisoner of his life as she was of her circumstances. The more they spoke, the more Isabella felt the tug of connection, which terrified her. She was not naive, she understood the risks involved, but there was something about Marco that ignited a spark within her. She was both fascinated and horrified by the intensity of her feelings. It was a dangerous game they were playing, and yet she found herself unable to turn away. "Tell me about your life," Marco prompted, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if he was studying her with an intensity meant to decipher her very soul. Isabella hesitated for a moment, contemplating how much to reveal. She had learned to guard her heart, to shield her vulnerabilities. But in this moment, with Marco's unwavering gaze upon her, she felt an urge to let her walls down. "I come from a world where choices matter," she confessed, her voice steadying. "Every decision can lead to another path. I've spent my life trying to make the right ones." Marco nodded, understanding flickering in his eyes. "Sometimes, the choices we make are dictated by circumstances beyond our control," he replied softly. "I've learned that the hard way." His admission resonated with her, striking a chord deep within her heart. Isabella felt an emotional connection growing, and it filled her with both hope and fear. As the night wore on, Isabella found herself falling deeper into the trap of their conversation. She was caught in a web woven from threads of attraction and danger, with every moment dragging her closer to a precipice from which she might not return. Yet, in the back of her mind, the voice of reason urged her to leave, to escape before it was too late. But just as she felt the weight of that thought, something shifted between them. Marco reached across the table, his hand gently taking hers. The warmth of his touch sent a jolt of electricity through her, silencing any rational thought. "Stay," he said softly, his eyes locked on hers, a plea wrapped in uncertainty. "Just a little longer." If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more dramatic tales. Isabella's heart raced as she processed the gravity of his words. The choice was no longer just about leaving, it was about confronting the burgeoning feelings that threatened to consume her. In a world where danger lurked at every corner, she was faced with a decision that could change everything. As the conversation unfolded, Marco leaned back slightly, his fingers steepled together, watching Isabella with an intensity that made her heart race. She found herself captivated by his presence, the way he commanded attention without uttering a single word. The flickering candlelight cast shadows across his face, adding an air of mystery that both intrigued and terrified her. Taking a deep breath, she decided to delve deeper into the man seated across from her, staunchly refusing to let her fear dictate her actions. "Tell me more about this life you lead," Isabella urged, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "What does it mean to be a boss in a world like yours?" Marco's expression shifted as he considered her question. "You think it's all glamour, don't you?" He chuckled softly, but the sound was laced with bitterness. "People see the power, the respect, but what they don't see is the isolation. Every decision you make cuts something away, takes something from you. There's always a price to pay." A part of Isabella felt a pang of sympathy as she listened. His words resonated with her own experiences, the sacrifices she'd made, the loneliness that accompanied her own choices. "I can understand that," she admitted, surprising herself at how easily the truth slipped from her lips. "It seems like no matter what path we choose, there's always something we lose along the way." Marco nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly as if assessing the depth of her empathy. "Exactly. You're astute, Isabella. Most people wouldn't see the connection between us, but we are reflections of each other in many ways. You try to navigate a world filled with expectations, and I navigate one filled with threats." She felt the weight of his gaze, which seemed to pierce through her carefully constructed defenses. In that moment, she recognized the truth behind his facade. Beneath the hardened exterior of the mafia boss lay a man burdened by choices, a man who had sacrificed his humanity for the sake of his empire. The realization sent a shiver down her spine, and she struggled with the emotions swirling within her. "Is it lonely at the top?" she asked, curiosity overriding her caution. Marco's expression darkened, and for a fleeting moment, she saw a glimpse of vulnerability that he quickly masked. "It is," he replied finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every ally is a potential enemy. Trust is a luxury I can't afford." The words hung heavily in the air, and Isabella felt a strange kinship with him. Here they were, two souls trapped in the confines of their circumstances, seeking solace in a dangerous dance. She was aware of the precariousness of their situation, yet a sense of understanding began to blossom between them. "And what about love? Does that have a place in your life?" Isabella pressed, her heart racing at the boldness of her question. She hadn't intended to pry, but something compelled her to explore the depths of his solitude. Marco's gaze shifted from her eyes to the table, and for a moment, he seemed lost in thought. "Love is a risk, Isabella. It can be beautiful, but it can also be a weapon. It can make you weak, and in my world, weakness is a death sentence." Isabella processed his words, sensing the truth behind them. "But isn't it worth the risk?" she challenged softly, her heart pounding. "To feel something real, to connect with someone on a deeper level?" A storm seemed to brew in Marco's eyes. "You speak of idealism, but in reality, love can betray you. It can lead to vulnerability, and vulnerability can be exploited." Yet, as he spoke, Isabella saw a flicker of something else, yearning, perhaps. It was as if he was grappling with the idea that love, despite its inherent dangers, remained a fundamental human need. Sometimes, we have to take risks to find what we truly want, she urged, her voice unwavering. Isabella wasn't sure where her courage was coming from, but she felt emboldened by their connection. You deserve to experience that, even if it scares you. Deserving and having are two different things, Marco replied, a hint of frustration creeping into his tone. I have made choices that have bound me to this life. And now, to step away. Maybe it's not about stepping away completely, but finding a balance, Isabella interjected, her heart racing. To allow yourself to feel, even amidst the chaos. Their gazes locked in a battle of wills, tension crackling in the air around them. Isabella felt a surge of courage rising within her as she confronted the man who had become a paradox in her mind, the feared mafia boss and the lonely man longing for connection. Just then, the restaurant's door swung open, and the chill of the night swept through the space, a stark reminder of the world outside. Isabella shivered, the cold air contrasting with the warmth of Marco's presence. It was a reminder that danger lurked beyond their bubble of conversation, and she could feel the temptation to flee pressing down on her. But Marco's hand reached across the table, his fingers brushing against hers, igniting a rush of warmth that chased away the chill. Stay, he urged, his voice low and earnest. Just a little longer. The world outside can wait. Isabella's heart raced as she processed his words, the gravity of their situation settling deep within her. She was torn, caught between the instinct to escape and the undeniable connection that tethered her to this man. As the weight of his gaze held her captive, she saw a flicker of possibility, a chance to explore the complex web of emotions that had begun to weave between them. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more dramatic tales. The moment hung in the air, charged with tension and unspoken promises. In the end, Isabella had to decide, would she embrace the chaos of her feelings, or would she turn away from a path that could change everything? The atmosphere inside the restaurant shifted as the tension outside seeped in through the walls, thickening the air with an unspoken threat. Isabella's heart raced in her chest as the evening's earlier calmness was shattered by the sudden chaos that erupted outside. She had barely begun to delve into Marco's complex world when the faint sound of raised voices drifted through the entrance. Stay, Marco urged again, his grip tightening around her hand as if to anchor her amidst the storms swirling just beyond the restaurant's heavy wooden door. The firmness of his touch sent a jolt through Isabella, reminding her of how palpable the danger was. Trust me. Isabella looked deep into his eyes, searching for assurance, yet all she found was an intense mix of resolve and a flicker of fear. What's happening out there? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, feeling the walls inch closer as anxiety gnawed at her. Marco's jaw clenched, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of the man who ruled with an iron fist, the mafia boss who had fought hard to carve out his existence in a world filled with betrayal. Enemies, he replied, his voice low, laced with the weight of unspoken consequences. They don't care about collateral damage. A knot twisted in her stomach, realizing that she was the collateral in this deadly game. She was a part of this world now, however unwillingly. The choice to leave felt like a distant dream, overshadowed by the reality before her. She hesitated, torn between the instinctual urge to escape and the magnetic pull of Marco's presence, which offered a strangely comforting yet dangerous allure despite the chaos brewing outside. As the shouting grew louder, a sudden crash echoed through the entrance, causing Isabella to jump. Marco stood up, eyes fierce and focused. I need you to stay here, he commanded, his tone brokering no argument. Whatever happens, do not leave this table. Marco, she began, but the look in his eyes silenced her. It was the look of a man who had made countless decisions that had put lives at risk, yet he was determined to protect her, even at the cost of his own safety. Just trust me, he reiterated, his voice softening as he stepped closer, the space between them shrinking to nothing as he leaned in. The tension of the moment buzzed through the air like static, and she could feel her resolve wavering. Please. Isabella swallowed hard, battling the whirlwind of emotions crashing within her. She felt a strange connection to this man who stood before her, a man shaped by choices that had carved deep scars into his soul. She was drawn to him, not just because of the danger he exuded but because he was a stark reminder of the fine line they both walked between survival and surrender. "Okay," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. "I'll stay." It was a promise she felt both relieved and terrified to make. The moment felt monumental, as if it could tip the scales of fate for both of them. But as the chaos outside continued to escalate, the reality of their situation pressed down upon her, suffocating in its weight. She wanted to scream, to run, to erase herself from this deadly dance, yet here she was, choosing to stand her ground. Isabella could feel Marco's gaze on her, a mixture of gratitude and something deeper, something more complicated. Just as she was calming her racing heart, the front door burst open. The restaurant's ambience shifted instantly, dark figures moved like shadows, their intentions as murky as the night sky outside. Isabella's breath hitched, and she instinctively clutched Marco's arm. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice steady yet urgent. The transformation in him was palpable. He became a shield, a force ready to protect whatever it took. Isabella felt her heart thump loudly in her chest as she watched Marco step forward, his presence commanding and fierce. In that moment, she understood that he would do anything to save her, even if it meant risking his own life. It was not just a protective instinct, it was a powerful declaration of his feelings, whether he realized it or not. "Marco," one of the intruders called out, their voice laced with a dangerous familiarity. "You think you can hide behind a wall forever?" Marco's response was swift, his demeanor shifting from the vulnerable man she had glimpsed moments before to the powerful boss who commanded respect. "Get out," he warned, his tone icy and unforgiving. "You're not welcome here." Isabella's heart raced as she felt the tension crackle in the air. She was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, wrestling with fear and an inexplicable sense of loyalty to Marco. She was aware of the precariousness of her position, both in the literal sense of her safety and the metaphorical sense of her heart. In that instant, she realized that she could not turn back. This man had pulled her into his world, a world fraught with danger yet filled with warmth she had never anticipated. She would have to face the consequences of this decision, for better or worse. But a part of her felt exhilarated, a thrill coursing through her veins as she stood side by side with Marco. With every second that passed, the stakes intensified, and Isabella knew this was just the beginning. She was no longer a bystander. She was part of Marco's life, his choices, his battles, his very essence. And as she stood there, her heart full of conflicting emotions, she couldn't help but wonder what the future held for them. "Stay," he had said. She had chosen to do just that, and with each heartbeat, she felt the weight of her decision settle over her, binding her to the man before her in a way that was irrevocable. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more dramatic tales. As the confrontation loomed ahead, Isabella steeled herself for whatever was to come, ready to face the chaos together. The atmosphere inside the restaurant had shifted, a delicate tension replacing the earlier chaos. Isabella and Marco found a semblance of sanctuary amidst the dim light and the lingering scent of rich Italian dishes. The gentle hum of conversation around them faded into a background murmur, leaving just the two of them suspended in their own world. Marco was no longer just a mafia boss, he was a man stripped of his armor, revealing the vulnerability that lay beneath. "Tell me about your life," Isabella asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a simple question, yet it carried the weight of their entangled destinies. Marco met her gaze, his expression shifting from guarded to contemplative. His dark eyes held stories of struggle, loss, and the choices that had brought him to this moment. "Life in this world is never simple," he replied, leaning back in his chair, fingers interlaced. "Every day, I make decisions that affect not only my life but the lives of everyone around me." His voice was low, a rumble of unyielding strength tinged with a hint of sadness. "It's a burden I carry, one that isolates me more than anything else." Isabella felt a pang of empathy for him. The image of the powerful man in front of her was slowly being replaced by someone who bore the scars of his choices. "But don't you ever wish for something different?" she pressed, her curiosity piqued. "A life where you don't have to look over your shoulder constantly?" Marco's gaze hardened for a moment, and she saw the flicker of a storm brewing behind his calm facade. I once did, he admitted, his voice dropping to a near whisper. But dreams become luxuries you can't afford when you're responsible for others' safety. He paused, his expression softening as he continued, I've lost too much to even think about what could have been. The gravity of his words settled heavily between them, and Isabella could feel the intensity of their connection deepen. What did you lose? She found herself asking, desperate to understand the man behind the reputation. Everything, Marco said simply, though the weight of that word seemed anything but. Family, friends, trust. In this life, loyalty is everything, and betrayal is a death sentence. His eyes searched hers, as if gauging her reaction, and she felt the urge to comfort him, to bridge the chasm of loneliness that surrounded him. I can't imagine living under that kind of pressure, she replied, her heart aching for him. But you've survived. You're here, still standing, still fighting. Marco chuckled softly, but it was devoid of humor. Survival comes at a cost, Isabella. I've had to make choices that haunt me, decisions that I can never take back. The weight of those choices is my constant companion. His gaze flicked away, lost in memories that visibly pained him. Sometimes, I think back to the man I used to be, he continued, almost as if he were speaking more to himself than to her. Before this life consumed me. I wonder if he would even recognize what I've become. His tone was laced with regret, and Isabella felt herself drawn in, wanting to reach out, to wrap her hands around that pain and ease it somehow. You're still that man, Marco, she said, a surge of conviction propelling her words. You're just, shaped by your experiences. That doesn't erase who you are inside. He looked at her then, and for the first time, she saw a crack in the armor he had built around himself. I'm not sure I can believe that, he murmured, and the raw honesty of his vulnerability made her heart race. Why not? She leaned forward, a daring spark igniting within her as she attempted to penetrate the shadows of his past. You've shown me a side of you that's real, that's human. You're not just a shadow in the dark, Marco. You are here, sitting with me, sharing this moment. That means something. For a brief second, a flicker of hope ignited in his eyes, but it was quickly extinguished by the weight of reality pressing back in. And where does that leave us? He asked, his voice almost a plea. It leaves us here, Isabella stated firmly, her heart racing. Trying to understand each other. Trying to find some sort of connection in this madness. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibilities. Isabella could feel the tension shifting, her pulse quickening as they moved towards something deeper, something life-altering. I didn't expect to feel this way, Marco confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. You've come into my life and disrupted everything. I have to keep you safe, yet I can't protect you from who I am. Each word felt like a confession, unveiling layers of his character that he had long hidden from the world. Maybe you don't have to protect me from you, Isabella suggested gently, her heart pounding with the weight of her own vulnerability. Maybe we can face this together. Just as the air crackled between them, the realization dawned upon Isabella, this moment would mark a turning point in their lives. They were both at the edge of a precipice, facing a future that was as uncertain as it was exhilarating. Can you stay? Marco asked suddenly, his voice trembling with a mixture of hope and trepidation. I can't promise you safety, and I can't promise you anything beyond this moment. But I need you to stay. Isabella's heart soared and plummeted all at once. She understood the weight of his request, the gravity of what it meant to choose each other in a world full of shadows. I'll stay, she said, her voice steady despite the raging storm of emotions inside her. As she made that choice, she felt the world shift beneath her. This was no longer just a matter of survival, it was an affirmation of her own desires, an acceptance of the complexities of love and loyalty. Don't forget to like this video to support our storytelling, she thought, realizing how their story was slowly intertwining in a way neither of them had anticipated. Together, they would navigate the darkness, forging a path through the shadows that would forever change their lives. As the atmosphere thickened in the dimly lit restaurant, Marco's gaze remained locked onto Isabella's, an unspoken understanding passing between them. The weight of their conversation hung heavily in the air, charged with both fear and an unexpected sense of intimacy. Outside, the city buzzed with life, but inside, time seemed suspended. It was here, surrounded by the shadows of flickering candlelight, that they faced a pivotal moment that would ripple through their lives. Marco's voice trembled slightly as he broke the silence again. I have to decide whether to protect you or protect my empire. It's a choice that could cost me everything. His expression morphed with the struggle, a man caught between his duty to his family and his growing feelings for Isabella. She could see the turmoil in his eyes, and it resonated within her. In this moment, they were both vulnerable, standing on the edge of an irrevocable decision. Isabella felt her heart racing as she processed his words. The stakes had never felt higher. You've done so much for me already, she replied, her voice betraying a mix of fear and admiration. But can you really put everything on the line for someone like me? It's not about who you are, Isabella, Marco countered, leaning closer, his intensity palpable. It's about what you represent. You've brought light into a world that has been shrouded in darkness for far too long. You've shown me that there is more than just survival. There's a semblance of hope. Hope. The word echoed in her mind, filling her with both warmth and dread. The life she had chosen to escape was still there, lurking in the shadows, but here, with Marco, she felt a spark, a possibility for something more than just existing. Yet, the reality of his world loomed ominously in the background. Marco, she said softly, I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. You're a leader, your people depend on you. Do you think I haven't thought about that? He shot back, frustration threading through his voice. Every moment, I am forced to choose between my responsibilities and my desires. But every second I spend with you makes me question everything I've built. His honesty hit her like a tidal wave, and she grasped the enormity of their connection. They were both caught in a spiraling dance of emotions, duty still clinging to the edges of their hearts as desire pulled them closer. What if I'm a distraction? She whispered, her eyes searching his for clarity. A distraction that I need, he replied fervently, his hand reaching out to cover hers, a gentle yet powerful gesture that sent shivers down her spine. I can't let you walk away. Not now, not after everything. Just then, a sudden noise broke their bubble, a glass shattering loudly against the floor outside the main entrance. Isabella's heart raced as she instinctively turned toward the source of the sound. Was this the moment Marco had feared? Were his enemies closing in, ready to take everything from him? Marco's eyes darkened, instantly shifting from vulnerable to alert. Stay here, he ordered, his grip on her hand tightening. No matter what happens, stay out of sight. Marco, I can't just hide, she protested, her fierce spirit flaring. If something is happening, I want to be by your side. I don't want to run away. But he cut her off, his jaw set. You don't understand the danger. If they find you with me, it will be a death sentence. A rush of emotions surged through her. Fear, anger, and something that felt dangerously like love mixed together. I won't let you face this alone, she insisted, but he shook his head, his expression hardening as he stepped back, visibly torn between his protective instincts and her fierce determination. Please, Isabella. Trust me. I'm doing this for you, he said, his voice low yet commanding. She could see in his eyes the shadows of his past decisions, the sacrifices he had made, and the cost of loyalty he had paid. As the sounds outside escalated, chaos unfurling in the streets, Marco took a step toward the door, his presence commanding. Stay, he commanded gently yet firmly, his tone brokering no argument. The urgency in his voice sent a spike of adrenaline through her, and she knew how much he needed her to comply. Resisting her instinct to follow him, she nodded, feeling the gravity of the moment sink in. Just, be careful, she murmured, feeling a sense of helplessness wash over her as he turned away, ready to confront whatever danger awaited them outside. I'll do my best, he said over his shoulder, his expression softening for just a moment before he stepped into the unknown, leaving her in the uncertain shadows of the restaurant. As she stood there, heart racing, Isabella felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She could no longer deny the reality of what was unfolding around her. She had chosen to be here, to risk everything, just as Marco had. The world they lived in was chaotic, full of shadows, but it was also filled with moments of connection, moments that could spark change. In the depths of her heart, she understood that this was not just a battle between rivals, it was a battle for their very souls. And as she leaned against the wall, her breath steadying, she felt a rush of courage. Whatever happened next, she would be ready. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel for more dramatic tales, she thought, the words echoing in her mind even as she focused on the doorway, hoping for Marco's return. Isabella leaned against the wall, the vibrant atmosphere of the restaurant now a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing inside her. The moments that had unfolded between her and Marco felt surreal, like a beautiful painting marred by dark strokes of uncertainty. She had chosen to step into his world, yet the gravity of this decision had begun to weigh heavily on her heart. The fragile connection they had forged now danced on a precipice, teetering dangerously close to the edge. Outside, the sounds of chaos continued to escalate, the clamor of raised voices and the distant roar of engines reverberating through the night. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the noise, but the images of Marco stepping into danger flooded her mind. What if something happened to him? What if his choice to protect her cost him everything? A surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins as the door swung open, revealing Marco's imposing figure silhouetted against the backdrop of the tumult outside. He had left her in the shadows, yet here he was, embodying strength and vulnerability all at once. Her heart raced as she remembered the softness in his eyes just moments before, the way he had taken her hand as if she were his lifeline. In that instant, she realized the depth of her feelings for him. They were intertwined in a world that threatened to swallow them whole. Marco's life as a mafia boss carried a weight she could hardly comprehend, laden with consequences that reached far beyond their intimate moments. Yet, even in the darkness, he had offered her a glimpse of light, a promise of something more meaningful than mere survival. The thought ignited a fire within her, a determination that propelled her forward. She couldn't sit idly by while he faced the dangers that loomed outside. With renewed resolve, she stepped towards the door, her instincts urging her not to hide. "Marco," she called out, her voice cutting through the confusion. He turned, surprise flickering across his features as their eyes met. In that moment, the world around them faded away. The chaos outside was merely a distant hum drowned out by the tempestuous emotions swirling between them. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice a mix of incredulity and concern. "I'm not leaving you," Isabella stated, her tone unwavering. "I can't just hide while you confront whatever this is. I won't be a pawn in your game of survival." A flash of admiration shone in Marco's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by worry. "You don't understand the risk, Isabella. This isn't a game. If they find you here, it could mean death for both of us. But staying silent won't save us," she countered fiercely, her heart pounding. "I know that you bear the weight of your choices, but that doesn't mean I'll shrink away. We can face this together." His expression softened momentarily, the fierce protector within him battling against the instinct to shield her from harm. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "I want you to be safe. That's all I care about." Isabella felt warmth flood her chest as she reached out and touched his arm, the connection sending a spark between them. "Then let me be part of this, Marco. I refuse to be someone you must hide away. If we're in this together, let's confront whatever comes our way." The tension hung thick in the air, a physical manifestation of their conflicting emotions. Marco's gaze bore into hers, searching for something, a flicker of doubt, perhaps, or a confirmation that she understood the gravity of their situation. "I can't promise you safety," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I can promise you honesty. This life," he gestured towards the door, "it's treacherous. You could be taken from me in an instant." "And what about you?" she pressed, her eyes glistening with unspoken fears. "You could lose everything trying to protect me. We can't keep living like this, caught in a cycle of fear and duty." A tense silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sounds of the unfolding chaos outside. Isabella could see the storm brewing in Marco's eyes, the conflict within him battling against the fierce need to protect what he had begun to care for. "Isabella, he began, but the sound of shattering glass interrupted them once more, a harsh reminder of the reality they faced. Whatever is out there, we will face it together. I'm not afraid. In fact, I'm more afraid of losing you than I am of what may come, she declared, her voice steady and firm. Marco took a deep breath, the weight of her words settling over him like a cloak. It was a moment of clarity. He understood now that this connection wasn't just a fleeting affair or a mere distraction. It was real, rooted in something deeper than the chaos surrounding them. Then stay close, he said finally, determination sparking in his eyes. But you need to trust me. I will do everything in my power to keep us safe. I trust you, Marco, she assured him, the sincerity in her voice wrapping around them like a warm embrace. With a final, resolute nod, Marco stepped outside, pulling Isabella along with him. The brightness of the night was stark against the tension they carried, but together they faced the unknown. It was a pact sealed not just with words, but with shared aspirations, fears, and a promise of resilience. Don't forget to like this video to support our storytelling, she thought, her heart racing as they prepared to navigate the storm that awaited them. Whatever came next, they would do it side by side, knowing that their bond had the power to withstand even the fiercest of tempests. The night wore on, the shadows lengthening in the dimly lit restaurant where everything had changed just hours before. Isabella and Marco sat across from each other, their expressions reflecting the tumult of emotions swirling within. The chaos that had threatened to tear them apart now felt more like a bond, an invisible thread connecting them amidst the shadows of danger and desire. Isabella, Marco began, his voice low and steady, you must understand that what we have is fragile. The world outside this restaurant is brutal, and it does not play favorites. He leaned back slightly, his hands clasped together as though holding on to something precious, a moment, a feeling, or even a promise. I know, she replied softly, her gaze unwavering. But I refuse to walk away from this. From you. Isabella felt the weight of her words settle between them like a veil, both a shield and a challenge. The thrill of her declaration danced in the air, igniting a spark in Marco's eyes that spoke of vulnerability and fierce determination. The tension hung thick, wrapping around them as they navigated the uncharted waters of their connection. Isabella was no longer merely a pawn in Marco's world, she was a player, a force of nature determined to carve out her own path within the chaos. What if the cost of staying is too high? Marco asked, a hint of desperation creeping into his tone. What if by choosing this, we endanger everything you've ever known? What if, she countered, her heart racing. What if we end up finding something worth fighting for? Something that gives meaning to the darkness we're surrounded by? The sincerity in her voice pierced through the uncertainty, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of hope in his expression. Marco ran a hand through his hair, the weight of his choices pressing heavily upon him. They were both aware of the stakes, and yet, this moment felt transformative. You're right, he admitted, his voice barely audible. But you also need to understand that my world is filled with shadows, and I can't let those shadows consume you. Isabella leaned forward, closing the distance between them. But what if we face those shadows together? What if we learn to navigate through them, instead of allowing them to dictate our lives? There was a fire in her words, a fierce determination that seemed to ignite something deep within Marco. As they exchanged glances, the unspoken tension became palpable, charged with the intensity of their connection. The city outside continued its chaotic rhythm, but for them, the world had narrowed to the space they occupied together. Isabella, Marco whispered, his voice laced with urgency, I may not be able to protect you from everything, but I can promise you this, I will fight. I will fight against the darkness for you. A shiver ran down her spine at the sincerity of his promise. In that moment, Isabella felt a wave of emotions crash over her, fear, hope, love, and determination. Then let's fight together, she breathed, reaching across the table to take his hand. Their fingers entwined, sealing a pact that felt as real and tangible as the gravity of their decisions. The moment hung in the air, suspended between them as they sank deeper into their shared understanding. The past no longer felt like a burden but rather a path that led them to this very moment. We'll figure this out, Marco. Together, Isabella reassured him, her voice steady. We'll face whatever comes. Marco nodded, the resolve in his eyes shifting to something warmer as he gripped her hand tighter. You've brought light into my life, Isabella. It's a light I never thought I could have again. His admission was raw, vulnerable, and it invited a connection that transcended mere attraction. It spoke of a deeper bond forming in the crucible of their shared experiences. As they sat together, the night continued to unfold outside, a reminder of the chaos that lay just beyond their sanctuary. But within this moment, they had created their own reality, a place where hope could flourish amidst the storm. It was not just a resignation to fate, but a declaration of intent, a refusal to succumb to the darkness. Isabella squeezed his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against hers, a physical promise of support and strength. I won't shy away from the future, Marco, no matter how daunting it may seem. I choose to stand with you. Stay, Marco implored softly, his eyes searching hers for affirmation. The intensity of his gaze held so much unvoiced emotion, and she felt the weight of his plea resonate deep within her. I will stay, she responded, her heart swelling with conviction. I choose to face this with you. In that moment, they both understood that their lives would never be the same. The choices they made now would echo through their futures, shaping the paths ahead. It was an irreversible decision, layered with uncertainty, yet illuminated by the possibility of love and partnership. Don't forget to like this video to support our storytelling. Isabella thought as they shared a moment of serene intimacy, wrapped in their newfound resolve. The night stretched before them, filled with both risks and rewards, but together, they dared to dream of a brighter tomorrow, even amidst the shadows. Together, they would confront whatever threats loomed, and in doing so, they would forge a future that was truly their own.